Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla, which is red again. So surprise, surprise, I guess, which we'll talk about. But yeah, let's go over Tesla, let's go over the market, let's go over everything and essentially figure out what the hell's happening with Tesla. So if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. And of course, this is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, my membership section on YouTube is live. The link is below, $3 a month, access to all my posts, thoughts, etc. throughout the day. Now, I want to get into something important here. Before we get into the chart itself, I want to talk about this. Now, it's OPEX week, right? Tomorrow arguably being the most important day of the week in terms of volatility and whatnot. But something that's really weird that came up is this, right? And I'm not sure like what to make of it personally, but I've never seen something this unusual in terms of options flow, at least for Tesla, in a while at least. 82.2 million in premium puts, so pretty much 82 million put. 416.7 puts expiring tomorrow. Then we have one in between, which it's not letting me mouse over. Maybe if I reduce this a little bit like this. Here we go. Then we have this one inside of that one. 30.2 million in premium, 400 puts expiring tomorrow. 11.6, 290 puts expiring tomorrow. 7.8 expiring tomorrow. 35.4 expiring tomorrow, 250 puts. We have another one in between, also 250 put, 42 million essentially expiring tomorrow. So I'm not entirely sure what to make of this because yes, it is OPEX. Yes, tomorrow is probably going to be pretty volatile. I mean, in theory, at least, whatever. But this is like pretty substantial. Like this is like, I don't know if others are seeing this. I don't know. Maybe this app is like glitching or something. I don't know what to make of it. So I figured I'd share. You guys can let me know what you think about this. What are your thoughts about this down below? Because I genuinely don't know what to think about this. I exited my cash secured puts I had for a bit of a profit after seeing this. Just because I'm not taking any chances for now. We'll see what tomorrow brings, but yeah, we'll see. So figured I'd mention that first because that's pretty important. But let's just dive into the chart. So Tesla, once again, somehow just down almost 2% on the day, closing at 211.5, which again, while the market is just skyrocketing up, the QQQ up 1.5%. Tesla should have been up, assuming Tesla just followed the market. That's all it did, just follow the market, right? Just played its, typical situation, being relative to the NASDAQ or QQQ. It would have been up like 2.5%, 3%, like easily. And instead we're down like almost 2%. So Tesla is really having this is just really, truly, like almost unusual for it to be like this bad. Like this almost feels like back when Elon was selling and we just kept falling. Took a bit of a break and then just kept falling. We just couldn't really find any life in between, at all, right? And this kind of feels like that. Like yes, it's not as substantial of a fall as that, but it's very surprising to me as to how little life there are in between each major drop. Like we're getting the smallest, tiniest pops imaginable into just another substantial drop. Even when the market, this is the part that's most weird, I guess, even though all the market and NASDAQ and everything are just rallying, like they're looking great, right? So, take that for what it's worth. Obviously, yesterday we talked about how we had that beautiful looking hammer candle, right? One of my favorite potential reversal patterns. But like we said, there's always a risk with this, right? Nothing is guaranteed. We need to see follow through. And the worst part is the fact that it started off good. The morning started off good. We had a gap up and it was looking pretty decent. We came down to gap fill and that could have been exactly what we're looking for. The morning started off exactly the way you needed to. I still took profits. Thankfully, I took profits. Unfortunately, I entered a little bit too early because I didn't think we'd break below 212. So I pretty much gave back those profits. So I pretty much went even on the day. It is what it is. But the morning started off exactly the way it needed to, just for Tesla to pretty much collapse once again. And I don't know what is going on with this stock. I genuinely don't know. This is like pretty substantial weakness. Like the fact that it's not finding any life is very strange. We broke below 212 on the intraday as well. And you can see acting as a support. And then we broke down below in this massive candle right here. Came back, resistance, came down even lower, tagged pretty much 208 almost, like in the 208s. And then we rallied back up and now we're just sitting at just shy of 212, a little bit down post market once again, as expected, of course, because Tesla is Tesla, right? So yeah, I'll be honest, this move is definitely catching me off guard. It's catching a lot of people off guard. People that I follow, whose opinions I quote unquote value, if you will, that I've been trading, and especially Tesla trading for years, like much longer than I have, are also really just getting caught off guard with this because this is extremely unusual movement. Now, the main thing I usually tell, at least my subs and what I've been telling them is, if you're someone that's at least somewhat risk adverse and you want to be at least safer, if you will, on this entry for Tesla, because it is pretty freaking low, right? It's we'll talk about that, but it's obviously had a pretty severe sell-off. This is arguably a crash at this point, right? Because there's no life in between. We're just crashing, right? Pretty much ever since this day right here. Let me go ahead and bring that up one more time. We've crashed 20%, right? 20% in like 21 days with almost no life in between. Like this is probably the biggest one we've had right here. Otherwise, it's just pretty much straight down, right? But what I usually tell them is the fact that the more safe-ish, obviously there's always risk involved, but the more safe-ish thing to do if you really if you want to trade Tesla, pretty much around these lows, if you will, is waiting for a breakout out of this channel. At some point, it will break out of this channel. It's not a matter of if. It absolutely will. I guarantee you that it will. Not financial advice, just my opinion. But the question is just when. Will we just continue lower? Maybe we'll tap the bottom of this channel one more time. Maybe that's a possibility. Now that we lost 212, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that we drop down even further, maybe even tomorrow, especially with these kind of just like unbelievable. I don't know. Again, I don't know what to make of this. This is like pretty big. This is substantial, right? We'll see. We'll see what tomorrow brings. Tomorrow might be a spicy one, right? But the fact that we broke below 212 and then we now, supposedly, or at least seemingly acting as a resistance, not the most ideal scenario. As I said yesterday, Tesla overall is still, it's looking bearish. Like I know it's hard to say this and it sucks to say this. Imagine like falling all this down like this and still saying Tesla's bearish. Like, yes, it's at some point it will need to bounce. At some point it will need to find some life. But closing below this massive trend line is not great. Losing the 200 moving average on the weekly is not great. Like that's just not good. That's bad. It's really, really not ideal. It could be still a false breakdown. Now we'll talk about that. There is still one more hopium, if you will, for the bulls. We'll talk about that very soon. But losing these moving averages isn't great. Like we're just crashing below we were above every single one just a few weeks ago, and now we're pretty much below every single one on the weekly and on the daily, and potentially now the weekly if tomorrow isn't just a massive pump, which at this rate seems pretty unlikely that we'll close above 218.5 by tomorrow. Again, this can still be a false breakout, right? Similar to on the daily, right? Remember we had this massive breakout and then we just collapsed back in and pretty much crashed even further like down, right? False breakouts. These are very, very possible. Like false breakouts, false breakdowns, they do happen. I wouldn't rely on it. And I think playing around, like I think being someone that sees this and be like, yeah, I want to pretend this is a false breakout and I'm just going to assume it's going to go back in. Yes, it's possible, but like playing around that and relying on such a thing to happen, probably not going to happen often, right? Usually these don't happen. Like it's more rare that this does happen like this than it doesn't, right? So just take that into consideration. But unfortunately, the same applies to the weekly. It can be a false breakdown. This could be a massive bear trap. But relying on that and looking at this and being like, yeah, this is going to be a false breakdown, it's going to rocket back up and back into the channel. Even though it is possible, don't get me wrong, absolutely possible. Betting on that though is not really in your favor, in my opinion, just my opinion, right? So we'll see how this plays out. We'll see how tomorrow brings. At the very least, I want to at least hold this VWAP, which isn't much higher than what we closed at today. Pretty much like about 213, roughly, at least 215 or 212.50. 212.50 will be like the minimum I'd want to recapture tomorrow, like minimum, like, and that's even to I don't know, to even have a chance next week, really. But let's talk about a few potential positive catalysts. So the first thing is the fact that, well, we're crashing, right? We've never had, like I said, 5 red weekly candles in a row ever since way back here. Like literally, I have to go all the way back here, like this situation right here, back on February 25th, roughly 2019. Never had 5 weekly candles in a row, red. Take a look for yourself. You can look back yourself. I did it yesterday. You can check yesterday's video. It hasn't happened since that time. So that's number one. Pretty unusual stuff, right? The weekly on the RSI isn't oversold, but it is potentially setting up what could be a hidden bullish divergence. Now, what is a hidden bullish divergence? It's when the RSI makes lower low, or while the stock itself is not. So in this case, right, as you can see, the RSI at the moment on the weekly is sitting at fairly low levels of around, we'll say 37.5. which is lower than what this RSI sat on, for instance, on this weekly candle, which we are technically above at the moment, not by a lot, but we're still above it. But this weekly candle, when it was at that level, was sitting at about 39 and change, we'll say. Technically, that's a hidden bullish divergence, which is a good thing. That is a bullish catalyst. The only problem here is that it's not a very obvious hidden bullish divergence. It's very, very slight. So not the most convincing hidden bullish divergence, but something that may be a little bit more convincing, I guess, for the bulls, so at least have some hope, is two things. First, this massive green rectangle. This is just a massive area of, in theory, supply, or demand, right? As you can see, many times back here, we bounced exactly off of it. Came down here, bounced off of it. Then finally, when we crashed below it, you can see what happened when that happened. Came back up, turned it into resistance, crashed below. Came back up again, once again, resistance, crashed again. Finally had a massive push through, broke back above it, came back down, support, bounced, came back down, support, bounce. And we're pretty much here once again. A little bit more to go potentially, right? Of course, don't get me wrong. There's still a few more dollars left before we really truly enter this green rectangle, but I'm sure you see the idea, right? It's an old support, which then turned into resistance, which then we, blasted through, thankfully, after many attempts, and then turned it back into a support. And now we're coming back into it, and it, in theory, should act as a support, act as a potential demand area, especially with the psychological 200 level. So take that into account as well. Now, that's number one. The second thing that, potentially can be a little bit of, hopium, if you will, for the bulls is this yellow line. This yellow line is a trend line from the lows all the way over here when we were about 150, right? We were about 150. Then we came back down over here, right? When we went to about 193 roughly. And now we're pretty much right back down at that same trend line as well. This could be that false breakdown. This is the level, rough level. Ideally, I would really want to hold. It's already really bad that we're breaking below this massive trend line up here, pretty much where the 200 moving averages, the green line. But at the very least, this could still potentially set up as a bear trap. Again, relying on something like this isn't not my, favorite thing to do here, right? This is kind of just really really cherry picking anything you can possibly find for the bulls here. But there's potential. There is still potential here, especially with that massive demand area pretty much right down below it. So we'll see. The one thing I'm overall looking at the structure of this as well is obviously we have earnings next week on Wednesday. We're selling off into earnings. I think we can agree on that. We're selling off substantially into earnings, which in my eyes is usually a good thing in terms of potentially what happens post earnings, because we're selling off. The expectations are much easier to beat. And the market isn't going to be as punishing for Tesla if the earnings are okay, or maybe just, slightly good or something like that. You know what I mean? Tesla tends to sell off during earnings because it usually runs up into earnings. Look at the past earnings. It usually runs up into earnings, at least maybe 5 days before, even a week before. It does run up slightly into earnings pretty often, which is why it's known to always sell after earnings, because it usually runs up and then it sells because the expectations increase essentially, right? It's kind of the opposite here. We're this time crashing into earnings, which can potentially make earnings actually be a little bit, quote unquote, easier to beat, if you will, or at least the market can be a bit more forgiving potentially as well. So we'll see how that comes out, or how that plays out. But selling off into earnings makes me a little bit more optimistic about how post earnings will go. So we'll see how that plays out as well. But those are the main things I'm looking at right now. We're in a pretty wild situation. Now, this bottom part of this, trend line, this new one I drew right here, you can see, right, going kind of to the bottom right, is pretty much where if we start losing these areas, if we start losing this yellow line as well, if we start crashing below, let's say, 210 and start closing below 210, it becomes a very real possibility that we come back down to the bottom of this right here, which will put us pretty much between 180 to as low as potentially even 170. So keep that in mind, right? That it's a very real possibility that Tesla can potentially see that. Will we see a quick bounce in between? I don't know. But the one thing I personally wouldn't be surprised if it happens, if we close pretty much right around this general level tomorrow and the weekly candle does close looking like this, which would not be the best looking weekly candle in the entire world, is if we do have an earnings, and let's say the market is a bit more forgiving, and let's say we do rally post earnings. Unfortunately, the first thing I'm going to start assuming is the fact that it's just a dead cat bounce, number one, and two, it's essentially just going to be a rally back up to potentially 220 roughly, maybe slightly higher, best case scenario, 220 to 230, best case scenario. And that's all it's going to be is a retest of this breakdown that we pretty much are experiencing seemingly right now. We'll see how tomorrow closes. Maybe tomorrow's a massive rally, who knows? But all I'm going to see is the fact that it's just going to be a retest of this, what is it doing? Right? Somewhere around here, just a retest of this breakdown that we've had. And then we go down even lower, and that's what brings us back down to about this, general level. This is kind of what I personally foresee happening. Assuming we close like this. Obviously, there's still a chance that this is just a massive bear trap and we just completely rally. Maybe we completely re-enter and then we break up to the upside. Who knows? No one knows for sure. But as of right now and as it stands, to me, this is the more likely path. We'll see how it actually plays out. But that's kind of what I'm thinking, and that's kind of what I am seeing right now. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button. Pretty wild stuff, pretty wild day, pretty wild move, price action for Tesla the past few weeks. It's it caught me off guard. I have no shame in admitting it. It did catch me off guard. I did pay the price for it. This is probably my worst month in probably the last year, if not more, maybe 2 years. I don't know. This is easily one of my worst months. This is like probably one of my first actual like true red months in a very long time as well. It is what it is, right? Sometimes these kind of things happen. Like the market will always find a way to do this, and it is what it is, right? You have to just kind of accept it and move past it, and move on. But it did catch me off guard. Caught a lot of people off guard. It's pretty disgusting price action, but we'll see how it actually shapes up and what ends up being, and see how earnings ends up playing towards it. But overall, right now, not looking great. We'll see how it plays out though. So all in all, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.